Hi everybody, it's Spitz with Pixels and Pills from Digital Pharma East in Philadelphia 2012. It's my pleasure to have Jay Bryant, VP of Sales from LiveWorld. Everybody talks about social media engagement within the healthcare space. These folks actually do it. Can you tell a little bit about LiveWorld and some of the offerings that you provide pharma, presumably medical device, and other healthcare providers?
Sure. We're a 16-year-old company based out of San Jose, California. We have a deep background in how to take a company culture online and to protect it. So that's a lot of our work is through our moderation services, our community management, and our technology to provide a safe experience and help provide engagement and insight to our clients.
Great. So I'm Spitz Pharmaceuticals. In terms of the value proposition, in terms of your service offerings, do you actually create an entire platform for me? Do you offer just moderation and filtering? Basically, what kind of services can I get?
It's pretty much custom work. We're actually a Facebook preferred developer for our moderation solutions. So we have a platform that we can use to scale to monitor large amounts of user content across different multiple sites, including Facebook and Twitter, and we can do it in multiple languages. The thing is, for pharmaceutical, it provides a very established process so that we're documenting all the content that's coming through us. Basically can be documented and retained for policy review, or if the FDA shows up at your doorstep and wants to see everything for the last 6 months, we basically have it in a database. That's something, the native tools like on Twitter and Facebook don't provide, but we have very established processes, and we work a lot with companies around the escalation process of what's taking on to provide a good environment.
And by that, presumably, you mean adverse event reporting, reputation management issues, and usually those landmines that lie in between true patient and healthcare professional engagement and a real social media experience.
Yes, so we do a lot of work and have a lot of training in reporting adverse events and monitor for those. Again, it's the human part of this we feel is real important. We train our monitors extensively on the guidelines. We're constantly reviewing what their work is. And then, we've had a number of social media crises with our clients, and so we can usually help advise them what the type of content is coming through. We also provide insight tagging. So we do a lot of work and coming back and helping them fine-tune their content so it's more engaging. Because as they grow their audiences, the trick is how to get content that's more engaging and keep your fans and users engaged.
What kind of targets are you looking at? Is it disease state specific? Is it mostly an unbranded style of communication in terms of disease education that segues into a branded conversation? Can you explain that relationship between engaging patients or physicians within a conversation about their healthcare on the one hand, and then ultimately driving that conversation to a more branded experience, which is obviously in the interest of the sponsors of the sites? Right.
I mean, you just don't see much happening in driving the branded. Because I don't think anybody, particularly around RX products, are doing branded conversations, basically because the guidelines aren't there yet. So by far you're staying away. Most of our work has been with consumer health products or in private communities where there is much more control or the risk isn't as large to that. So I think particularly around RX is still a long ways to go so far as the whole social thing. Unbranded, obviously, companies are doing numerous things, and we can come in and help them with these efforts to make sure that they're safe and comply with their policies.
So what's the incentive for organizations, let's say pharmaceutical companies and the like, to really engage your services? Is it really about market conditioning and educating the community about either a disease state, presenting multiple treatment options in kind of an open-ended way, or basically just stimulating dialogue among the segment?
We liken it to coming in and we talk to brands about throwing a party or setting up a restaurant. So what type of environment do you want? So pharmaceuticals, is it someplace stayed like this here in Philadelphia? Or is it a rowdy place over at the Jersey Shore? And so what type of what type of environment you want? And so we help set up this environment with the right policies and procedures and the community management to sort of keep these conversations within the context of what this party is that they're putting on. So it's part of it is just to socialize, to learn behavior, to build loyalty with theirs. When you think about it, I've been taking some of these companies' products for 15 or 20 years, so I have an affinity towards their products and what it does in my life. There's things I want to share with them. There's information I want to get from them when I engage with them. So I think that's the expectations we talk about from the consumer. I think the pharma companies have the ability to share a lot of their knowledge. I mean, they're experts. I mean, you look at all the experts we have in about diabetes and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of potential in that.
And do you provide mentorship opportunities, kind of seated experts who could participate contextually within the conversations? Is there recourse to authoritative content, error correction with regard to some of the conversations or some of the factual information? Any other value adds that you provide in terms of the actual streaming of the conversations?
I mean, we've done community management for like a private pharma community. It was a closed community, but a lot of that was our work in bringing community manager, actually putting them in their offices and helping them training. How do you write a blog that asks for engagement? How do you respond? How do you become social in events like this? So they would show up at these conventions. Well, how do you become social? How do you engage? How do you use this platform you're building to activate these people and engage them and retain them?
And you mentioned it's kind of baby steps to get to that point where you can have kind of an open-ended discussion that's more branded and more treatment specific for both patients and even for physicians. How far away are we, and what do you think is really in the way to ultimately bridging that gap for pharma in terms of true social engagement in a way that does get that branded kind of traction?
Boy, I still think they're looking for FDA guidance. I mean, I think a lot of it culturally, they need to be prepared to be able to respond in real time is one of our biggest challenges, and particularly, they're going to get hit with a crisis. I mean, we just know that. I mean, people are litigating against them when a social media venue opens up. They're going to show up. So how do you respond in real time to this? If you don't, it blows up and it goes nuts. And you've seen that many times where they're just not prepared internally to be able to respond. And we get this not only in pharma but with our other clients too. So it's just not unique. A lot of it's just the culture of large companies aren't willing to react in real time.
And based on your experience, I'm sure the audience might be curious about learning a few best practices or principles that you apply for that very type of crisis management, which is what I've heard and experienced before too, is actually heightening the engagement, not pulling back, expressing more openness and transparency during a crisis, as well as being as responsive as possible to folks who are kind of raising the yellow flags. Are those a few of the things that you practice? Yeah,
I mean, a lot of it is you've got to look at really at what the root of the problem is and how that's impacting your base. And what are the true issues? Are you addressing them? Are you being authentic about it? Are you being in real time? Are you letting people vent? A lot of this is the ability to let people vent because they're not going to go away. And sometimes, I mean, it's hard for them to understand. We've had numerous discussions with corporate communications people. You've got to let these people vent. It'll go away in 1 or 2 days. If you don't let them vent, guess what? It blows up and it lasts like weeks, and you then have to come back and work very aggressively of how do you adjust your brand reputation.
Yeah, and talking about brand reputation, it seems to be a realignment about how marketing folks think about their brands. The old notion that a brand has to be protected within the space, that a brand is somehow perfect, and that any kind of engagement is threatening has to change to the point where we know brands are imperfect. We know that there will be problems. We know that there will be complaints, and then using channels very much like yours to actually engage our constituents, talk to them meaningfully person to person instead of creating or perpetuating that enigma of brand infallibility.
And very much like the guy from GSK, I mean, a lot of it is preventative. If you're in there engaging, if you really develop good brand advocates, guess what? In the middle of a crisis, they're going to come to their defense for you. And we've seen that time and time again. If you develop the time to reach out and have relationships with these people that you're engaging with, they become your brand advocates, and ultimately they're going to save you in these crisis situations.
Thanks. Jay Bryant, folks, from LiveWorld, VP of Sales, telling us how it is in terms of actually doing within healthcare or social media instead of just philosophizing about it. It's good to have the rubber hit the road. Spitz from Digital Pharma East 2012 in Philly. Thanks.